Welcome back to Reality Check. Normally the show is with myself and Jay Richardson, but my man left me hanging. He's probably sleeping in bed like he usually is. And so I told my man Tyler, continue to come on and let's get the show rocking. The show must go on. And so that's what we're going to do. The show must go on. But for those who haven't been a part of the show is a sports talk show with my perspective and Jay Richardson's perspective on current topics. Sometimes we talk about things that are educational or wisdom that we must impart to either young people, our perspective towards what's going on in current athletics, or just what's going on in the sporting world in general. We have a beginning part of the show is called On the Fly, and we have a series of topics that we go through and give our individual perspective. And then the body of the show is usually us just having discussion around things that are important within the sport. And then we end with advice from either my perspective or his perspective to young athletes or to whoever that we may be talking to. And this show will be no different. And for today's topics, we were planning on talking about the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 merging with one another. And if you've been with us for the other episodes, I said this probably 2 or 3 episodes ago that I thought that the Big Ten had to do something to combat the SEC. And the SEC has Oklahoma and Texas joining the conference. And with that being said, I think that was going to do a lot of damage in regards to the recruiting pool that everybody has. And so when you pull a bunch of kids out of Oklahoma who has a tradition of great football, and you pull a bunch of kids to Texas and bring them over to the SEC conference, I think that does nothing but just shatters and combats, all of these other schools who may be able to pull those kids out of those states and bring them into their conference to play for them. I think the selling point for the SEC becomes that, hey, we play the best football, we play the best teams, and we can prepare you to go to the NFL. And most kids want to go to the NFL. So to combat that, the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big Ten got together. And I see that they said they've formed an alliance with one another, and I'm not really sure what that means. I think that they had to get ahead of it. And just sort of like, if you can rewind with me, it's sort of like the NCAA when you had California, Florida, and all of these people start talking about the name, image, and likeness piece. And once they start talking about that they were going to allow players and athletes to make money off their names, it forced a conversation with the NCAA to say, okay, if they're going to take the lead and allow athletes to do this, then we need to do something. And the initial thing that the NCAA had done was that they went out and said, hey, we're going to talk about this and we're going to discuss it. And as you see now, it kind of sped up the conversation, and now athletes are in a position to deal with their name, image, and likeness. And so if you can kind of compare it to this conference thing, I think the SEC kind of pushed the envelope forward and said, hey, we're going to get together with Texas and Oklahoma, and we're going to start in 2023. And I think that the alliance sort of conversation that the Pac-12 and Big Ten and ACC is having, I think it's sort of like the same thing. I think these people are basically doing the same thing that the NCAA did and saying like, hey, we don't know what we're going to do, but we have to do something to kind of combat this wave. And so when I was looking at it, inside of the ACC, I know you have for a premier team, you have Clemson, you have Florida State, you have I don't know if Virginia and Virginia Tech are premier programs, but they're solid programs, and somehow, some way they can fight. North Carolina and Duke, they've had a few good seasons, but I don't know where they'll rank in this whole big scenario. But then in the Pac-12, you have USC, you have Stanford, you have Oregon, you have Oregon State. I don't know how those teams have historically been doing, but now I know that at least when you start to have this discussion, it seems to be that there's going to be like 2 power conferences, the SEC and then whatever these people decide to name themselves. And I think that it just makes it better. It makes it for better football. I think that for TV, for this name, image, and likeness piece that we're going through, I just think it makes it better. And for the traditionalists and the people who want to hold on to where they're from, and it should always be a Big Ten and always be an ACC and it always should be a Pac-12. I'm like the opposite. I understand things change, just as cell phones change and cars change and cameras change and lighting changes. Everything changes and everything evolves based on surrounding circumstances. And sometimes that the things that we've we grew up liking, or we grew up creating our perspective around. Sometimes those things change in front of our eyes, and we just embrace it and find out what's new. And these kids will now have an opportunity to play in different conferences and get different fan bases and be exposed to different people around the world based on based on the restructuring of everything. So the next thing, and that's sort of like my take on this merging of conferences, if you have it. I can't wait to see what it looks like. I can't wait to see what the SEC looks like. And I just think that at this point you have a better, you have a, where traditionally you would have to wait to bowl season for these teams to play one another. When you had like the Rose Bowl, and that would play like the winner of the Pac-12 versus the Big Ten. Now you're sort of getting like people who can manufacture these games throughout the season, and you can have different styles of football playing one another. And I just think it makes for better football. Just me personally, me being a football fan. The next thing is the voting for the NBA's best player had come out, and this is the first time that LeBron didn't get chose as number one. And I don't think it's of any surprise. And just as things have changed with college football, with the name, image, and likeness, and these conferences that have been established, I think that you have just a new emergent, and I think we've seen in the finals last year, you have new guys emerging to become the best players in new teams and new superstars. And just take this in consideration. I think this is LeBron's 18th or 19th year. And I think just some people are looking for what's next and who's next. At some point, Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson, they were, and Tracy McGrady, and at one time Rip Hamilton and Tayshaun Prince and all of those guys, and Ch3ck, those guys had been, and even the San Antonio Spurs, I had to like go back in my memory for like when I was in high school and I watched like the end of Jordan and the beginning of like whoever had the league at that time. And then you sort of went through that space, and then LeBron came in 2003, and then he became who he was, and he's held it down long enough. And I don't think it makes a world of a difference. You know what I'm saying? I think LeBron. I think LeBron thinks he's the best player within the game of basketball, but the people voting, I think they're just looking for what's next. I'm pretty sure they're going to say. Giannis, I always mess his name up. I call him the Greek Freak. That's the easiest thing to name. You know what I'm saying? But I'm pretty sure Giannis, he's probably been in the conversation. I think it's natural to put Devin Booker within the conversation. I think it's natural to put I don't know who else who would basically be in the top tier players of who they think the best is in the league. Kevin Durant, obviously, Kyrie Irving and James Harden and all those guys. John Morant. There's a ton of guys who are superstars now. But I think that conversation has more to do with people wanting to see what's next. I think as the NBA, you have to market what's next. LeBron has basically been the best player for the last 2 decades, and the conversation, whether people like it or not, has been centered around him. Him going to the playoffs, him moving teams, him moving from the conference to conference. And when you think about this, he's basically been in the league for a lifetime and has held up and exceeded every expectation, has probably done more business and has done better than anybody who you can possibly think of on the court and off the court. His image has been clean. And if, like with my kid, if he grew up and he wanted to be a basketball player, I would want him to model a lot of his behaviors, the way he approaches the game on the court and off the court after LeBron James. No different if I went to boxing, I would say I want my kid to be like Floyd Mayweather and so on and so forth. And so in LeBron's world, I don't think that it matters that much that he didn't get a vote. But to the people voting, I think it had more to do with these guys looking for what's next, right? So this next one is a more local conversation. And Ohio State had just previously named C.J. Stroud the starting quarterback. And like most incoming freshmen, we don't know too much about what they will do or what is to be expected. And in this case, the only thing I can speak to is that I understand what it's like to be a freshman, getting onto the field and playing, and sort of like what's going through your mind. And I can only imagine for this young guy, we play Minnesota first. And so Minnesota isn't a slouch of a team. They're coached by Ch3ck. And he's created this mantra. I think he was at Western Michigan before. He's just come over to Minnesota. He's turned the program around. I think he has this thing called Row the Boat. And his rowing the boat concept is speaking more to guys playing together, guys understanding that they are a part of the team that rows the boat, that gets the team going in the direction where they need to be, and not being a distraction and minimizing mistakes that you basically would have. And so, by any stretch of the imagination, I don't think that the guy's going to show up day one and not have a challenge on his hands. And so, one thing I know that helped me out as a freshman was that I was overly prepared. So I was like a film rat and I was a weight room rat. And so what that allowed me to do was that it allowed me to go into the game with a bunch of confidence and knowing what you're supposed to do, and knowing that you can physically do what you mentally know you need to do puts you in a place to say, hey, as long as my teammates do what they're supposed to do, at least I can plug in and do all the things that I know I've been coached to do, I've been studying to do, and that I'm prepared to do. And so my just advice to the young guy, if he happens to stumble across this film in any stretch, was just to make sure that every play that the team can possibly call, know every single play, go over the coverages, the blitz packages that you are probably getting from your coaches during film week. I would say just make sure that you get a ton of rest heading into the week of the game, being well rested, excuse me, and having your nerves in the right place. I think is a part of basically attacking the game the appropriate way. And I would say just play within your ability. You know what I'm saying? They have this thing in the world of investing called stay within your circle of competence, stay within what you know. And I think it's no different than football. You know what I'm saying? Do the things that you know that you can do very well. If you're not a good deep ball thrower, don't throw a bunch of deep balls initially. You know, so it's like you'll get your chance to take your shots, but if you have success throwing 15-yard passes and check downs, and if you get more success running the ball and getting hit, and that's what helps you to relax, you know, stay within your circle of competence and just do that. You know, I was never a guy who was going to get to an edge and out sprint a defensive end, a linebacker, and run up the field. My game was more in between the tackles, being quick, falling forward, and putting a game together over time. And so I always stayed within like my circle of competence, and I had success from doing that. And so I would suggest that, you know, you as a young guy, you know, you do that and make sure you stay within that realm. Ohio State is a it's a powerhouse program, and right, wrong, or indifferent, you're going to get, or he's going to get, Stroud is going to get a bunch of attention from this. You know, so if he does very well, you know, they'll make him believe that he's better than what he is, and if he does bad, they'll make him believe he's worse than what he is. And so, you know, understand that all that is a part of the game. You know, saying, and it's not to say that he'll do well or he'll do horrible, but just be yourself, and whatever is to come from it will come from it. But I do know this, you know, and I'll say this: I do know whatever. I heard a saying once that every player will rise to every player, every human being in whatever industry that they're in, they will rise to their level of preparedness, right? So whatever level of preparation that you've put together, whatever you've done in the dark will come to light, and whoever you are as a player, whoever you are as an individual, there will be a set of circumstances throughout the entire game that will reveal you to the audience, to the crowd, and whoever it is that is watching the game. Next topic. We got my man Justin Fields. He got introduced to the NFL, or the quote-unquote introduction to the NFL. Everybody likes to say you're introduced when you're hit very hard. And my man, I don't know his name, number 59 for the Buffalo Bills, the linebacker, he teed off on him. And I don't know if it was a missed block. I don't know if it was a late read or misread by the tackle who was supposed to adjust off of him. But my man had a clean twist, I think he did, and man, he just teed off on him. So I know that the lineman is getting his butt chewed in the film room by allowing your first round QB to get teed off on. And from that, everybody made jokes. Obviously, the hit went viral about Justin Fields calling the NFL slow. And from my perspective, like I tell everybody, him believing that the NFL is slow and him getting teed off on The 2 points aren't connected. The NFL can still feel slow to him. I think he ran a 4.3 or 4.4 at the combine. And for a quarterback, that is extremely fast. And him getting teed off on it just aren't the same thing. So I don't know how people are connecting both things. If you were a quarterback and you had freedom and you were outrunning defensive ends who probably, most of them traditionally run 4.7, 4.8s, and 4.9s in the 40, you probably would think that the NFL is slow, and it's very similar to running backs. And so that's his perspective, and he moves relatively fast. The guys typically blazing when I see them at Ohio State and moving around, and obviously you're playing some of the similar players, and but that's my little 2 cents about it. I think that he'll do just fine. But I think the person who have the real issue is the tackle or the tight end. I don't remember, who was on that side of the ball who missed the block, because nobody, believe you me, nobody's supposed to become that free in the NFL to basically have the ability to tee off on the guy. And I really think the guy knew that he was going to get fined when he hit Justin Fields, because everybody knows in the world that you don't lead with the crown of your helmet, and you don't you don't smack a quarterback like that. I think the rule is you don't hit him above the torso. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. But I think the rule is to protect him. You don't hit him above the torso. You hit him and lead with your shoulder and try to protect him in some capacity. But I think my man knew that it would be a viral hit. I don't think he cared. For those who don't know, there are some guys, I promise you, there's some guys in NFL locker rooms and college locker rooms and everywhere who will lift weights, who will work out literally just for the purpose of hitting you hard. And thanks to my man Tyler, his name was Andre Smith. So Andre Smith, you might be one of those guys who just lift weights and lives to smack the shit out of people. and that's that. Moving on, Ch3ck, I apologize if I said it wrong, but Ch3ck Richardson finished last in the 100-meter dash over the weekend. And I had a lot of thoughts about this, and I'm going to unpack this one for everybody who may have seen the race, right? So you have a woman who obviously had shown us, I want to say that was maybe like 6 to 8 weeks ago when she ran in whatever event that she ran in, when she burnt 100 down, and everybody paraded and loved her and celebrated her and thought that she was the coolest thing in America. And then a few weeks after that, or a couple weeks after that, I don't know the timelines, she was put into a situation where she couldn't go to the Olympics and run because she had marijuana within her system. And then everybody had their opinion on that. Her mother had passed away. I'm pretty sure with all of what was going on, I'm pretty sure her focus, her energy, her perspective wasn't to prepare for this moment. Whether you love it or hate it, I just don't think that mentally she was all into it. But one thing I'll never take away from her is that she ran a super fast time in her event, where she was focused, she was diligent in her training, and she was focused on doing everything that she had to do. And I'm going to stick with believing that she'll eventually get back to that person. Sometimes a loss helps us to put things in perspective. And after the race, I actually enjoyed her interview because she dealt with everything head on. She knew that she lost the race. She didn't pout. She didn't walk off the track and say, "Forget the media." She didn't avoid the camera. She didn't avoid it all. She was like, "Look, I didn't run as fast as I wanted to do. I didn't perform the way I wanted to. But at the end of the day, I showed up. I did the best that I could, and I'm going to come back stronger." And I can just think of myself that when I've had certain failures, the replaying of that failure basically encourages you to go back out and train harder, become more focused, lock into a different perspective, and go be the champion that you are. So please believe me, you don't go out and run. I think she ran like a 10.5 or 10.4, 10 whatever it was in the previous race. You don't get to that point without being like religiously dedicated to your sport, right? You don't get to that point, and that means you have the ability to have like a supreme focus that most people don't have, to prepare yourself, to diet right, to run right, to recover right, to do all those things. And so me personally, I think she'll be just fine. It's no difference than when you've seen Floyd Mayweather when I think it was like the last time he fought in the Olympics. It was a decision that got made where they stole the fight from him. And I think that moment in history, that motivated him to go out here and be 50-0 and whoop on guys' asses the way that he did. And so I look at her, with her being young, she loses that race, she gets embarrassed in front of the world. Now it does two things. One thing, you can cry, you can complain, you can bitch, and you can hide your head. But when you come into the camera, come to the reporter, admit what went wrong, admit that you weren't the best that you know you can be. And when you attack her head on, man, I commend her for it. But I also think that's the attitude that needs to be taken to get her back to where she needs to be. And so that's my 2 cents on it. I'm into encouraging people when stuff goes wrong. I don't like to beat people up because I've been on the flip side of that where people beat me up when things aren't going right my way, right? And so this last one, I woke up this morning and I was a bit, I don't want to say disappointed. I would say disappointed. I wanted to see Paqiao and Errol Spence fight, but I think Errol Spence, his retina was detached from his eye. And I don't know if this is from the car wreck that he had maybe a few years back or a couple of years back, but something happened to where his retina wasn't detached, and then Paqiao basically had to fight. I think you pronounce it Ugas, the gentleman from Cuba, the fighter. And I just seen on TV that Paqiao lost. And so I don't look at this as a bad thing for Manny Pacquiao or his legacy. I think that he comes from a different era where win, lose, or draw, he fights or looks just to fight the best people at all times. I think that's why he wanted to fight Errol Spence. I think that's why he wanted to fight Bud Crawford. And so obviously he brought this guy in here. And for anybody who knows boxing, styles make fights. I think obviously the gentleman Ugas, hopefully I'm saying his name right, he was just a much bigger fighter. And I was just looking at the clips of it. And when I seen the guy, he was a much bigger fighter. You have to figure out that Paqiao probably trained for a different style and a different fight for Errol Spence. And so then when you get put into the ring probably a week or 72 hours before, probably 72 hours before you're supposed to fight a guy, he's a championship fighter, you're a championship fighter. His styles make fights, and you have to practice and prepare and basically feel guys out. And so I chalk it up more to that. Maybe the guy's a better fighter. From what I've seen and what I read, he was just basically neutralizing all the movement with Paqiao. I seen the 12th round. I seen the whole 12th round. I see somebody record it, and he was teeing off on Paqiao. He was just a much bigger guy where Paqiao couldn't get in, couldn't move around, or he probably didn't develop a strategy. But my hat's off to Paqiao. I think he's 42, 43 years old, still getting in there with young guys, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years younger than him. And he's still mixing it up. I seen him mix it up with Adrian Bronner. I seen him mix it up with Keith Thurman. I've seen this guy go out here and compete and box his head off. But I also think that Manny Pacquiao is fighting for something much bigger. You know what I'm saying? He's from the Philippines. I know he's running, I don't know if it's a congressman, a senator, or some political position down there. And he's beloved by his people. I think he fights because he loves it. He's in a sport. And I think he's healthy enough to do so. I think anybody who sees him move, he moves like he's 22 or 23 years old, and he still loves it. He's enjoying it. So hats off to him, but hats off to the other gentleman who won the title. And I enjoy it now because I think, Errol Spence goes out here and fights a guy like that. I think that guy and Bud Crawford get a chance to mix it up. And so you see these premier level fighters being able to mix it up. And I think the sport of boxing in general is healthy. But just like we talked about in the beginning of the show, where collegiate sports is evolving, right? And then you see the nature of LeBron being the face of everything, that's evolving into something else. And just like boxing, Mayweather's and the guys we grew up on, or the guys I grew up on, Mayweather's and Pacquiao's and Adrian Bronner's, and people just who you're used to seeing. These guys are getting older, and you transition to the new generation. And I'm not one of those guys who hates on the younger generation. Like, you just, you embrace it, you see it for what it is. You say, man, this is kind of cool. But I was blessed to see the Mike Tyson generation, and I was blessed to see the Lennox Lewis and the Riddick Bowe and the Hakeem Rahman and the James Toney and the Roy Jones and Felix Trinidad and, just Danny Garcia and Bud Crawford. I've seen so many guys in boxing that I just enjoy, I just enjoy the evolution of everything. I'm just not a hater on young people. I'm not a hater on people just, doing a thing or what's going on. And so I'm going to end the show. I'm not going to say we because obviously Jay's not here. I don't know where you at, Jay, but your ass is not here. You're supposed to be here, and you know you're supposed to be here. But I'm going to end the show, or I'm going to transition with two different things for the show. And
Start with transition.
should I do the whole thing over?
Nah, let's start with transition.
What did I say after that?
So I'm gonna transition into the last two things.
Okay. All right. Now I'm about to transition into the last two parts of the show. I normally would say we, but obviously Jay's not here, so it's a me thing, right? So I'm going to transition into the last part of the show, and the last part of the show is usually easy and it's just more advice to something going on. And so this week's topic is what will my thoughts be, or what will my advice be to the young person in the name, image, and likeness space, and how would I handle it as an 18-year-old kid? You know, I guess with a 37-year-old brain with an 18-year-old kid. And so what I would say to that is that I would probably, this is the first thing I would do, I would probably go and seek out or look to establish myself with a local car dealership, right? And I think that if you're some superstar, if you have some notoriety, I think the easiest payday is for a local car company. I think an insurance agency, anybody within sales, people who are typically in sales generate more money, and they love to be affiliated or associated with people who can promote their brand to make their brands look cool, or the place to happen. With most used car companies, or most car companies, they make a decent margin on vehicles that they sell, where they can go pay an athlete 5 to 10 grand to shoot a commercial, to associate themselves with them, and maybe you can get a residual, a monthly commercial, a monthly autograph signing that you can do, and you could establish yourself like that. I would definitely think of something cool in regards to my brand, and have myself like a group of cool T-shirts that I can sell and distribute and give to customers. I would somehow, in some capacity, figure out how to manufacture my own jersey. I don't think that that's that hard to do in this day and age. There's 1,000 jerseys that you can get together, and I would basically, you can either include Ohio State's logo or your college's logo, or you could not. But if you're a big enough star, people will buy something, a product that's affiliated with you, that I think that you can go through. And I would think of like just, I would look around. I would look at hoodies. I would look at shirts. I would look at just different influencers and different people around of products that I can create that I basically can sell to everybody. I know Pittsburgh had those little terrible towels, and if you're a cool guy and you have a different product, a novelty product, you can sell and produce that at large to people. And I would look to do things like that. Maybe you call your mother, your brother, your uncle, or somebody who could help you to facilitate autograph sessions. You know what I mean? These are all things to where a kid can either do himself or have a group of people help to manage a setup where he can generate money for himself and he can do well. What was the second part of that question? Those are just little things that I would do, and these are just things that I can think of off the top of my head. But if you're an athlete, you want to get with a company who are into sales. You know what I mean? Anybody who's into sales, you have a better likelihood of getting money from those guys than you have with any other thing. Like, restaurants, those are cool to affiliate with, but they have they've line item budgets, right? They're paying for marketing online. They can do online marketing with targeted Google ads, targeted Facebook ads, targeted Instagram ads. And no offense to the athlete, but they don't really need the athlete to promote their good chicken or good hamburger or whatever it is. They can do a very good commercial and run a sale and do that. But in regards to other things, with like sales, like selling bigger margin products, like a hamburger may have a 50-cent margin, so you have to sell a bunch of hamburgers to get paid, right? With a car, you'll get $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000, and that has a bigger margin. You can get paid off of something like that. And I'm pretty sure I'll have more thoughts around this, but if you all think of something, leave it in the comments, and maybe an athlete can go from there and see the thing. And my last one is usually the daily deposits. And the daily deposits, they want to know, how do you defeat distractions and manage your time as an athlete if you're a person on a path to success. And to me, it's relatively simple now. You know, when you're younger, you really don't know how to do it because it's like, you know, super complex. You have thousand different things going on. You think 1,000 things are important. You know, you think your girlfriend is important at the time. You think hanging out with your friends are important at the time. But the best way to minimize distractions is to just stay focused on what you're doing, right? And what I mean by that is that at the top of every day, I have like, a composition notebook. And I write down what it is that I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to go, and the things that I need to do to get to that place. And all of my time is filled with that, right? I learned that years ago when I was in prison. I remember talking to Warren Buffett. He had reinforced it that, you know, when you're focused on something, all of your time is basically dedicated to that something. And it's the same thing I say now. You know, when you're focused on becoming who you want to become, the majority of your time will be spent doing that thing. The majority of your time will be spent focusing on that thing. The majority of your time will be spent, you know, getting resources around that thing. The majority of your time will be spent reading books, watching YouTube videos, going to conferences, developing yourself, and I kind of got off track, but I'm mainly speaking to athletes. The majority of your time will be spent around that thing. And the process is, or the question you have to ask yourself is like, you know, do I really want to be great inside this space? You know, and I think that's the hard question that people don't want to, like, it's easy to say I want to be great inside of a space, but am I willing to dedicate myself and my time to this, right? Am I willing to do everything that I possibly can do within my being and not have, and not know if like I'm really going to make it? And I think that's what ends up basically distracting people, right? They'll see something that they want to do and they'll see like, hey man, if I make it across this river, if I make it across this boat, or like if I make it to this point and I achieve this goal, everything will be all right. But there's really no guarantee that if you put in the work that'll happen. And I just seen that the unknowing kills more people. You know what I'm saying? They just don't know. Like they don't know. So it's easy to get discouraged and not put the time in. It's easy not to show up. It's easy to get distracted doing something else that's safe. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of guys don't give themselves their chance. And so, like I said the other day, like you have to work your ass off, dedicate yourself, commit yourself just to give yourself a chance. You know, that's it. Just to give yourself a chance, a legit chance of becoming a somebody. Like you have to do all the fucking things right. And that's fucking hard. Like that's probably like the hardest thing to do, to dedicate yourself to something where you don't, like, you're not guaranteed results, right? But that's like what separates people. You know what I'm saying? That's literally what separates people. Like, you know, prime example, like when I started off on my entrepreneurship journey, you start and you move forward with not a lot of answers. You know, you have more things that you're inquiring about. And, you know, every time you do something, you're questioning yourself, right? And then if you're connected to people, they're guessing like your efforts put into something. Like, is this worth it? Like, should you be doing this? Are you doing the right thing? You know, everybody's telling you to play it safe. You know what I mean? Everybody's telling you to do what everybody else has done because they understand those results. You know, I had this conversation on the phone with my brother last night, and we were talking about it. Like, the world is made up of people teaching you and conditioning you to play it safe, right? But I think you actually kill yourself when you play yourself safe because you're really not living. You're sort of like conforming to what everybody else has done and not really taking a chance on yourself. And I think that's what life is. Like, I think when you're most happy, when you're most pure, when you're most joyous, is that when you're really taking a chance on yourself, when you're really figuring out who you are within the process of pursuing something. And that's like, you know, that's all of that self-discovery. I think the unwrapping and unpacking of that's life, you know, just from my perspective, because you get to find out who you are. You know what I mean? If you're always doing what everybody else has done, you all have like a collection of the same experiences. And deep down inside, you have to ask yourself, like, is this for me? You know what I mean? And so for me, like, I'm trying to pursue what's great inside of Maurice Ch3ck. And part of that is that I know that the things that I think of at the top of the day, the things that go through my mind, all of these things are, I'm acting on these things throughout the day. I'm acting on these things throughout the week. I'm acting on these things throughout the month. And I may not be moving as fast as I want to, but I'm progressing, but I'm also happy with myself and I'm happy with what I'm doing. And I have like dominion over my own life. You know what I'm saying? And so with that being said, I'm gonna end the show. This is reality check with myself. Like I said, Jay Richardson isn't here and the show will go on. It always goes on. And, you know, and Y'all have a great rest of the day. Y'all leave your comments. You like, subscribe, and you tell Jay how much of I ain't gonna dog my man. Tell Jay how much you love him. But if you know me, you know it's about to come out after that traditionally. But Jay, we love you. Wish you were here. You'll be here next week, but